at a past and maybe will be in a future uh, biological form right here on this planet? I don't know. You know, I have this weird thing like ever since I was a kid, I would think I had connections to England. Like we would go to when I first went to Busch Gardens. I never forget. I went to Busch Gardens. I was like 6 years old. I'd never seen Busch Gardens before in Williamsburg, Virginia, and there it was. They have it divided into countries. You have England, Scotland, Italy, Germany. I think they've added Ireland now, and a couple others I can't remember. So I went to England, to the little England country, and they have people dressed up like they were in medieval England. All of a sudden, I was almost floored by this feeling of I've been here before. And now it's possible that I caught a commercial, and then that got into my subconscious in there and started cooking and working. And then the next thing you know, because if memories can be false. I guess you guys knew that, but there's a TED talk that is incredibly interesting on false memories. And this lady, she got attacked left and right for getting criminals off because they proved that it wasn't the one. I went through something recently. I'm going to tell you how false memories can be, folks. I went through something very serious not only a year ago. I had a guy try to break into the house. He knocked on the door. I didn't answer. He went to the back window, started trying to pry it up with a shovel. He heard me moving around. He came back to the front door. Of course, I didn't see him. I just caught a glimpse of him. Well, my camera caught him. I got a camera on the property, and but it just caught the side of his head. Well, I posted that photo, and I had 8 separate people in my small town respond and tell me they knew who that was, and we told the police that's who it was. And we were pushing, and the police said, no, we've talked to him. We've talked to him, And I was thinking, well, he lied to you. I didn't say that. But we were pushing like, yeah, everybody's still saying it's him. And they finally said, no, it was not him. And we know it wasn't him. And I'm thinking, does this guy have a twin? Or are the police just, fucking up right now? It turns out it wasn't him. It was another guy. And I actually got to a point where I confronted this guy before we found out who the actual perpetrator was, because I believed these 8 people were correct, and I confronted them, and that could have been turned into a very dangerous situation, mostly for him, but still. And I had to apologize to him later, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the reason I had to apologize. I let popular belief push me into a false certainty. And that's something you really have to watch out for. This guy, he may have had a spotty past, but he wasn't the guy that tried to break into my house that day. And I was just about ready to fucking kill him. So, yes, I have a real life prime recent example that I can point to, but there are so many smaller, more subtle things that happen with us in our memories. And it's most illustrated through lineups when you have people say, and this one guy was convicted in this particular TED Talk. She was talking about this one guy who's convicted. The lady in the lineup said, he looks the most like him. That's what got him charged. And he got convicted. And it took about 6 months for them to figure out it wasn't him. So he went on to sue the police department and stuff. And in the middle of that lawsuit, he had a massive heart attack at 35 years old and died. Hey, I hear you, brother. But that's just an example. False beliefs. You believe that shit's real. And they have so many examples of psychiatrists and psychologists that were into, I think regressive hypnosis and stuff like that were planting, not necessarily intentionally, but just through extracting bad information and making suggestions. It's always about the suggestions. They were planting evidence and planting memories. And those memories they grow on their own. All you got to do is plant a little seed. And they've had so many examples of this, like when they showed people a car accident, and they said, how fast do you think the cars were going when they hit each other? They had a certain speed. Then they said, how fast do you think the cars were going when they crashed into each other? Used the word crash. Well, the speed jumped up 7 miles per hour, just from using the word crash. Not only that, but there were people, when you use the word crash, that claimed they saw broken glass in the video, and there was no broken glass. So this is what our mind does. It likes to fill in the holes and creates a whole lot of something from a little bit of nothing. And we have to be careful with that. As far as aliens and UFOs, I think they're plentiful throughout the universe. I just have no reason to believe anything else. It just makes sense. It's like looking out in a cornfield and all you can see is one stalk, but you see all of the conditions needed there for many, many stalks to be growing. So your guess is that there are more stalks than the one, and yet you have no evidence. Why? Because you're only as big as an ant and you haven't gone that far. I don't know. I believe there are a great many more corn stalks out there. That's what I believe. Got no proof for it. Is it okay to believe in something you don't have proof for? As long as you you know that you don't have proof for it? I mean, that's the difference, isn't it, Stabby? Someone saying God is real. I'm just saying, as opposed to someone saying, I believe a God is real. And you ask them why, and they say, well, I read this and that and this, and it seems reasonable. I mean, you could argue with them, but what would you come away with? You know, one thing I do agree with is we need to keep stuff like that out of the schools. I would never want to go into a school and push on people that aliens are real, UFOs are real. We need to get ready to meet the next life form we're going to meet that's intelligent. I wouldn't want to push that. Now, if we had evidence, yes. But that's the difference between religion and what I'm talking about here, as far as just likelihood, based on what we know it takes to create life, the average time it takes for life to evolve, then you have the average span it takes for a civilization to destroy itself after it discovers the intelligence to create massive weapons, things of that nature. All these things are factored in there to these theories, and you can start making your guesses. One thing I pretty firmly believe about life is it wants to keep going. Don't know why, don't really care why. But if it wants to keep going, I think it's likely to find ways to preserve itself. And if it has to adapt and adapt and adapt and over time, that's fine. You know, 99% of the species that have ever lived on Earth have died. If they adapted, they continue on. And, you know, you can't adapt to a meteorite hitting. That's kind of a bitch. But that's the whole idea with spreading your seeds out. That's why I say we got to get people off this planet if we want humans to live. You can't have everything in one basket. Let me check and see what's going on in chat, and then I'm going to let you guys listen to a story about a doctor who says she died. Says she died while she was not just yakking, but kayaking. Hi, RD. Welcome to the chat. Sorry I didn't see you there. Yeah, I might die tonight. If I die tonight, this is my goodbye show. So, you know. But I had this show once before, so I have to be careful with that. I don't want to do that. It's awkward to say goodbye twice. That's weird. But, yeah, that could happen. But let's listen to this. This doctor thinks she died. I'll monitor the chat room some more. See what you guys think about this lady. See if she sounds credible to you. Now, I have a huge warning for you here. I'm sorry. But this is Fox News. All right. They're as far right as MSNBC has left. You have that angle. So account for the angle, adjust, and then maybe you can get something out of this.
And now to an incredible story of survival. A well-respected surgeon kayaking in a remote South American river drowns. 15 minutes underwater after a horrific accident pins her to the bottom of a river. No air and no way out. Amazingly, Dr. Mary Neal did manage to make it out alive after she was rescued. But she says she had a glimpse of the afterlife that she calls one of the greatest gifts she's ever received while she was struggling under that water. Author of the book To Heaven and Back, Dr. Mary Neal joins me now. She's an orthopedic spinal surgeon. Dr. Neal, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with this. Prior to this incident, were you a religious person?
I would say I was pretty typical in that I was raised in a church on Sunday mornings, and I did take my own children to Sunday school. But I think it was typical that I never incorporated spirituality into my daily life. And
did you have a thought about an afterlife or a heaven prior to this, one way or the other?
I'm not sure I really spent the time to think about it. I had 4 young children and a full-time job and a husband, and life gets in the way of thinking about spiritual things usually.
So you're out in this horrific accident. You find yourself under a waterfall kayaking, and you get
It wasn't horrific. It was wonderful.
Right. It starts off kind of horrific, though. And take us through it. What happens to you as you find yourself submerged underwater?
Well, I was submerged, and the force of the water had me absolutely pinned to the front deck of the boat. And so I was not able to push myself out of the boat or pull the spray skirt off and exit the boat. And I tried a number of times. before it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to exit the boat on my own, and I was far enough away from the shore of the river that I didn't think anyone was going to be pulling me out. And at that time, I gave my life over to God and truly and sincerely asked that God's will be done. And at that moment, everything changed. I was very calm and peaceful and felt great. And I had this very physical sense of being held and comforted and reassured that everything would be fine. My husband and my children would be fine, regardless of whether I lived or died.
This is while you're under the water with no air, with you can't breathe, you're completely submerged. Do you believe you were dying?
Yes. I continued to do self-assessment exams, and I knew I couldn't breathe, but for me it was a very seamless transition. I had never wanted to drown. I had always been afraid of drowning, even though I'm a water person. And for me, one of the remarkable things is that I never felt panic. I never felt afraid. I was really very calm and continually reassured, even though I knew that I had no air and I knew that I was dying.
You say you felt you rose up and out of the river, and when my soul broke through the surface of the water, I encountered a group of 15 or 20 souls who greeted me with the most overwhelming joy I have ever experienced. Tell us about that.
It was fantastic. These were people, spirits, souls, I'm not quite sure what to call them. All the words sound a little goofy. But they embraced me and were so filled with love and joy. And they were people that I had known for an eternity. And they had known me for an eternity. And we were so happy to see each other. And
so right there, what I would ask the lady to do is explain the personalities and lives of these people she's known for an eternity. Tell me about them. Tell me what they've done for the past 900 or 1,000 years. You've known them for an eternity. That's number one. I'm playing devil's advocate here. No religion, pun intended. Number two, when you're in extreme pain or panic and your body is undergoing major physical duress, the release and reuptake of pain-killing chemicals in the brain. You have a pharmacy built right into your brain just for shit like this. Prime example. And think of anybody you know that's been hurt, but remember Joe Theismann when Lawrence Taylor broke his leg in the game? He was leaving the game, right? Compound fracture, tibia and fibula. And he's like, I got to go back in the game. He was feeling fine. The pain relievers had been released, and the endorphins were flowing heavy. And who's to say that that's not what's happening when these people invariably get this sense of euphoria? They invariably find light, which is, they say, leftover electrons firing in the brainstem that stimulate the visual circuitry. They also say that what else would you expect if you're feeling love and light? You'd expect to be surrounded by people that love you, so that your imagination can collect about anybody at once over the memories that you have and assemble them. The same thing happens with old hag syndrome or sleep paralysis, when people say there's an evil presence in the room. This happened to me once. I woke up, I couldn't, something was going on in my dream. I couldn't scream. I was trying to scream, and all that came out was something like this. That's as loud as I could scream. And that's spinal gate theory, because, your brain shuts off the rest of your body so you don't go jump off a cliff. It was evolutionary. But there was the weird sense of an evil presence, and I thought, where'd that come from? And the scientists were saying, well, we think that's from the fact that you can't move. And that feels like someone must have done something to you. So it's a fear response filling in the holes of your imagination that are not yet filled in to try to figure out what happened. Possible. It's possible. That makes sense. But still, the feeling that something was evil in the room was incredibly dominant. I just remember thinking, this is some Satan shit. And I wasn't even into looking for ghosts or anything back then. But it was the only time it ever happened to me that I can remember. the sleep paralysis. So anyway, the brain does things when it's in trouble. The brain does things when it's coming from sleep to wake and wake to sleep. The brain is going to do things when the body's in trouble to try to